Ah, wow. Opinion, fact, or truth? So, a question we can ask ourselves every day is is everything we hear just someone's opinion? Or is there a deeper truth that underlies facts, opinions, whatever we are hearing? We can challenge our perspectives, and when we do that, we can better navigate today's information overload that we have. I mean, we were just talking about this before service started about there's so many ways to get information these days, and it just bombards us. And so, whether we're bombarded with this information every day or we're on our spiritual journey, it's time for us to be paying attention to fact, opinion, and truth, and to learn discernment. So I'm going to start with a little bit of humor. One of those, a bunch of guys walk into a bar kind of thing. Only this time it's a philosopher, a scientist, and a movie critic walk into a coffee shop. And they sit down at the bar, and the coffee barista goes, "Well, what'll it be?" And the philosopher goes, "The truth." And the scientist goes, "Just the facts." And the movie critic goes, "I'll have whatever's steeped in opinion." Yeah, I think you had to be there for it to be as funny as it sounded. Anyway, so there's an opinion, there is a viewpoint that we all have. And navigating through these turbulent times, it's really crucial for us to stay both aware and to apply the spiritual truths that we hold so dear, truths like oneness and wholeness, and that every everything that we encounter, every living being that we see is an expression of the divine, just as we are. No matter what our opinion is, our viewpoint, whether it's a fact or an opinion or whatever it is, everything is a living expression of the divine, just as we are. And I think one of the most important things for us to remember is the creative process itself and how powerful it can be in whichever way we use it, whether we use it consciously or unconsciously. It's powerful. And all of these spiritual truths that we hold so dear serve as a guiding light for us among all of this confusion to help to help us discern between facts and opinions and falsehoods and manipulations, and because all of it kind of blurs in together and what is what. And there's a term that we use in this teaching, this philosophy, this way of life that our founder Ernest Holmes used frequently, and that's open at the top. And what does that mean? What does open at the top mean? Originally, I thought it just meant, because of the stories that I heard when I lived in Southern California, it just meant that he wanted this organization to stay open because consciousness is always evolving, and there's always new um, a new perspective to be looking at. But what he really meant was for each of us as individuals and as organizations to stay receptive to new ideas and new perspectives, yet anchor ourselves in these beautiful spiritual principles that are eternal, that are immutable, that are always there. And that helps us to discern the truth from misinformation. And what it does is it allows us to show compassion, to spread compassion against the divides that come up in our lives. That what Brene Brown was talking about as this dissonance that can happen when we are we are presented with something that is not in alignment with what we in our humanness have as an opinion or a perspective of for ourselves. And what happens is when we can spread this compassion, when we can be curious, when we can be courageous and do what she says, or what Adam Grant says, in this turbulent world, we don't always get to hear and rethink and re-unlearn things. That's not the norm these days. But when we do that out of curiosity and out of courageousness, we actively contribute to a more inclusive and harmonious world. We become what it is we desire. So let's take a look at opinion. That'll throw fact and opinion together. That must be an opinionated fact. Oh my gosh. Let's look at opinion, fact, and truth. So, an opinion is a subjective statement. It's based on our personal beliefs or viewpoints that we have, judgments that we've made. It's shaped by our experiences, our emotions, what we've gathered from the world. As I like to liken our opinions to what Don Miguel Ruiz calls our domestication, as we become domesticated as this spiritual being having this human experience. And those opinions can vary both from person to person, and they can vary within a person too, depending on what you're hearing in the moment or how you're assimilating what you're hearing. And it does not require objective evidence to the person who holds that opinion. That opinion is their opinion because it's their opinion. And an example of that is a statement of opinion is that classical music is the most soothing genre of all music. And I can hold that opinion, and someone else can have the opinion that classical music drives is the worst thing I've ever, something that they don't like. They can put the opposite of soothing genre in there, and that's still their opinion. And who's right, who's wrong? It comes from our personal perspectives. Whereas a fact is an objective statement. It is supported by evidence, and it can be verified as true or false. It's based on empirical data and observation. Those of us who are familiar with the scientific method, when a scientist has a fact that they're all excited about, something that they've proven, it's all, for it to be accepted by the scientific community, other independent people need to create that same result to verify that it is what it is. Think of cold fusion number of years ago, those of us old enough to remember that, when somebody said, "Oh, we created cold fusion," and then nobody else could reproduce their results. And then they admitted that they had not. But facts are based on empirical data and observation. And when new information or a new discovery happens, the fact can change. Like there's a fact that water boils at 100 degrees C at sea level. That's a fact. If you're at sea level and you go to boil water, when the water gets to 100 degrees Celsius, excuse me, it will start to boil and bubble. If you're above sea level far enough, you may never see the water bubble. It'll still be hot. It'll still be 100 degrees C, but it's not going to bubble and boil. And that's another fact. A truth. Truth is immutable. It's spiritual truth. It's principle. And it's universally valid. It's unchanging regardless of the circumstances or new information. It's there. It's underlying everything. It forms the foundation of our spiritual and philosophical viewpoints and beliefs. It's considered eternal. It's considered absolute. And the more we understand that, because what can change, the truth itself doesn't change, but our relationship to that truth can change. And if you've been on this, those of us who are on this spiritual path, the more understanding we have of what oneness means, the more that the truth itself doesn't change, but how we respond to it, how we react to it, how we use it in our daily lives changes. Because the more we become aware that we are all one, and I'll ask that famous question of mine, how many are here today? Well, my Zoom thing says 22, but there's one. There's 22 unique expressions of the one. And when we go back to gallery mode, look around and you will see 22 expressions, unique expressions one, of one. And the more we understand that, the more we understand that whatever I do to you, I do to me. Whatever they do to you is done to me and to them and to everyone. It's a web that we are on, and we all get vibrated by whatever's happening. We all feel it. We all are affected by it. And that's what changes with a truth, is just our relationship with it. So the more we understand it, and the more we embody those truths, our perspective of the world and how it works changes. And as a result, we shift and evolve, and therefore all of humanity shifts and evolves. And so a truth statement is love is a fundamental aspect of human experience. We are all one. There's only one life. And while I was preparing for this, and I want to thank Bob for bringing it up about the fifth agreement, but in talking about domestication, Don Miguel Ruiz talks about when we hear an opinion and believe it, we make an agreement, and we have that become part of our belief system. And after he wrote the Four Agreements, which is a very powerful book, if you haven't read it, and it's great, best if you are in like a study group so you can talk to people about it. He wrote the fifth agreement, and the fifth agreement is to be skeptical and learn to listen. Learn to listen. So well, first let me go to a teaching story about opinion and how it can affect us. So there was excuse me, a young painter who was studying under a grand master, and he was really eager to show his skills and stuff. And so he created this beautiful landscape, took care with it, crafted every brush stroke, and he decided to take it to the town square to see what other people thought of it. So he put a sign under it. And he says, "I'm a new painter. There may be some mistakes in this painting, so please mark an X wherever you find a mistake." And so he came back later that day, and he was just devastated because the picture was full of X's and scribble with harsh comments about this mistake and that mistake. And he was like, "Oh my gosh." And he went back to the master, and he was in tears because I'm just not good enough to be an artist. And that's what Don Miguel Ruiz is talking about. We hear an opinion, we believe it, and it becomes part of our belief system. So he's believing now that he's not a good artist, that he can't even be an artist. So the master takes him to the side. He says, "Look, I will prove to you, you are a great artist. I will prove to you that you are. Paint that picture again." So the guy paints the picture again, and he comes back with it several days later, and the master says, "Now let's take this to the town square." So they took it to the town square, only the master put a different sign up. He said, "I am a new painter. There may be some mistakes in this picture. I'm going to leave some brushes and colors. If you see a mistake, please correct it for me." And they came back the next day. They didn't even come back that day. They came back the next day, and there were no comments. They came back a day later, and nothing had changed. And what the master said to him is, "The world is full of opinionated people that are eager to criticize. And it's really easy to find fault. And it's really easy. It doesn't take any skill or courage to mark an X where you think there's a mistake, where that person thinks there's a mistake. But it does take skill and courage to create." Anybody can mark the X. Anybody can pick and choose or nitpick at things, but few will take up a brush and make any corrections. Few will have the courage to say, maybe the river should run this way or whatever it is. And so he told the student, and I also say this to myself and to you, to remember that opinions are like passing clouds. They just drift through. They don't need to darken our sky. They can just go on by. We don't need to try to hold that cloud in over our head. So when we release them and we just keep painting and keep creating, that's where the truth lies. That's where the truth lies. The truth is we are all great creators. So in that light, there was a study at the University of California in San Diego where they found that the average American these days consumes about 34 gigabits of data and information every day. We take that in, and it can be really overwhelming. And what our responsibility is to exercise this discernment and distinguish between the truth, the fact, the opinion, and falsehoods. And that what we retain of that 34 gigabytes of information, that's a lot of information. It's all shaped by our personal perspectives, our beliefs, our experiences, and when we just allow it to come in, it can actually become an echo chamber that reinforces our biases, our limiting beliefs. Because what we know is where we put our attention is where energy is going to go. So if we're only retaining this, we're only being able to really pay close attention to a certain amount of that 34 gigabits that we're taking in, gigabytes, then if we put our attention on that which supports our limiting beliefs, we become that echo chamber. When we start to put our attention on those tiny little pinpricks of light that say that may not be the case, when we look for that effort, when we look for the kindness and we look for the love and we look for the tiniest bit of information that says love is all there is and the rest we made up, then what we do is that pinpoint of light starts to expand. I don't know if you've ever been in a completely dark situation and suddenly there's a tiny little bit of light and it feels like it's lighting up the whole room. And the more we pay attention to that light, the more it lightens up the dark that we're in. So it's crucial for us to be mindful of the sources, to be mindful of the credibility of the information. And what's even more important is to critically evaluate what it is we're taking in, to see that it is in alignment with spiritual truth and our personal opinion. And if our personal opinion is being offended by it, like Brene Brown says, when there's that dissonance, rather than trying to stuff it, it's time for us to use discernment. It's time for us to ask those questions. And one thing, discernment is different from judging. It is not judging others. When I looked it up, and there's many different ways to say what discernment is out there, depending on what dictionary you go to. But all of them, the common thread between them is that it is recognizing what aligns with the spiritual truth, with that truth that we were talking about. It's listening with our heart. It's listening with our heart, not our head. It's looking for that guidance of spirit. And for those of us who are a little more techie, it's taking the signal to noise ratio and decreasing the noise. It's allowing that signal to pop out of the truth of what's being said. And what that means in this philosophy is being open at the top. And when I put this in, because I can be very visual sometimes, when I put this in as a visual where I'm open at the top, I'm open at my crown chakra. When I open that up, what that does, it welcomes new insights. It lets go of it. if it doesn't let go of limiting beliefs, it at least pushes them out of the way for a few minutes and let me connect from heart to crown chakra to spirit and just allow that divine guidance to come in and help me to discern what is the truth. Again, in preparing for this, I found that there's a Buddhist tradition that I was not aware of before, and it's called the Two Truths Doctrine. And it addresses what changes and what endures. So the first truth is called conventional truth. And conventional truth is our everyday world of experience. And it includes our thoughts, beliefs, opinions, facts, all the information and interpretations that we make up in this human story. It makes the human story. And they're all real in a practical sense. The big thing about them is they're not permanent. They'll shift with time and culture and perspective. And I'm sure each of us can think of experiences that we've had on this path where we've had something that we thought was a truth that we realized at some point was not in alignment with a capital T truth. And we had to let that go. And I'm going to take a risk and share an experience of mine. And that was, I was raised here. I was raised in Virginia in the 1950s and 1960s. So yes, I'm old, but I'm ageless. During all of the civil rights, pre-civil rights and post-civil rights. And when at that time when you went to school in Virginia, you learned as much about the Confederacy as you learned about the US government, and the stars and bars, that famous flag became the symbol of states' rights, of individual freedom to be who you are. Only I found out later that wasn't quite the case. And so when I remember the day specifically, I was in Southern California, and somebody who didn't even know that the state of Virginia existed was flying a Stars and Bars flag. And when I asked them about it, they told me what it meant to them, and it wasn't what it meant to me. And then I realized, oh my gosh. It's like, oh my gosh, I had to stop stuffing the dissidence that I had been feeling for years. And I needed to let that go. It was a limiting belief. It was an incorrect, it was not dealing with both the human truth and the spiritual truth of it. And it was significant for me. That was huge for me to let that go. And that's what we need to do. That's that non-permanent truth. The second in this is the ultimate truth. It's that deeper, unchanging reality that's beneath the surface of appearance, that's beneath all of this effect that we live in. And it's what remains when you take away the opinions, the viewpoints, the temporary conditions all fall away. And this is the truth. It simply is. It is the truth. It is the truth that love is all there is, and the rest we've made up. It's the truth that we are all one. It is the truth that what happens to me happens to everyone. What happens to anyone happens to me, whether I immediately feel it or not. This practice is not to defend our opinions, but it's to release them. And it's not about grasping for certainty. It's about becoming open to what Spirit is revealing at this moment right now. And when we are open up the top, when we open up ourselves to that divine guidance and listen with our heart, just like the teaching symbol is coming from here and coming down to our heart and going through all that stuff that's in our head. And when we set that intention to let it to clearly go right to our heart, we will hear. We will hear that spiritual truth. We will feel it. And for me, all I need to do is go back to that one day where my life, I didn't feel at the time it changed, but it changed significantly because if I could let that go after having it ingrained in me for through all of my schooling, all the way through college, even, that I could let any limiting belief go by setting that intention that that's what I'm going to do. So let's take a look at it. The biggest challenge that we have right now is confronting the beliefs that directly oppose our uh, personal opinions, the things that we have been domesticated to believe, those opinions that we have believed and brought into our list of agreements that became part of our belief system. As Brene Brown said, well, I guess it was actually Adam Grant said, it's the ability to rethink and unlearn. That's the skill for us to learn. That is discernment. To listen with curiosity, to question with courage. That is what we are after. And so Holmes reminds us to keep our minds open at the top for a new influx of wisdom and to pause to evaluate our beliefs against the measure of truth. Be open at the top. Allow that to come in. Allow it to just like our teaching symbol shows and go through whatever is in our human experience and allow it to come to our heart where we listen and hear the truth. And when we do this, we can embrace uncertainty. We embrace curiosity. We embrace this unlearning and we embrace the critical thinking. And it allows us to look at these new perspectives and embrace them and evolve ourselves to this greater expression of the divine that we already are. It's the what we are. We are love. We are peace. We are joy. We are harmony. We are beauty. And all the rest we made up. All the rest of it we've made up. And when we do this, when we can listen with this, we can grow our understanding of spiritual truth and we can enhance our engagement with this complex world. And so what I ask each of us to do this week is to maintain that flexibility and openness at the top, to have get this clear framework of understanding about life and encourage us to reassess and evolve in our personal opinions and beliefs. And I will again put in a plug. It's from my heart plug for practitioners. Because working with a practitioner allowed me that a safe place to question my beliefs, to question the agreements that I had made, and to work with these spiritual truths, to have a greater understanding, not by them telling me what to believe or anything, but allowing it to come naturally, to allow it to go right through all that human crap that I have in my brain and come right to my heart so that I can hear the truth, so I can discern. And so we have to be willing to critically examine and potentially change our deep hidden beliefs. You know, there was a time when I didn't even know that I felt I belonged to nowhere in this world. And I have challenged that. I have looked at it with courage. I have utilized my prayer partners and practitioners to allow me that safe space to find out how to let that go. And I am grateful. I'm grateful for every person who has been part of this path. And if you're here today, you're part of that path. So I'm grateful for each and every one of you. So let's leverage spiritual truth to foster our personal growth. And when we do that, we evolve the whole human kind, all of humankind, because we have that ripple effect on everything. Thank you so much. I love each and every one of you. Namaste.